Welcome to the Vibrant Health Podcast with your hosts, Lydia Shatney and Jessica Espinoza. Lydia is a nutritional therapist and founder of Divine Health from the Inside Out. Jessica is a real food wellness educator and founder of the website, DeliciousObsessions.com. Since this is a health-related podcast, it should be noted that the hosts are not licensed medical professionals. The information and advice provided in this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or prescribe for any illness or health issue and should not be construed as medical advice. And now, here are the hosts of Vibrant Health Podcast, Lydia Shatney and Jessica Espinoza.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 18 of the Vibrant Health Podcast. I am Jessica from Delicious Obsessions, and I'm here with my co-host, Lydia of Divine Health from the Inside Out. Lydia, do you want to say hi?
Hey everyone. Today we're joined by a special guest, our friend and colleague Craig Fear, who is also a nutritional therapy practitioner, and he's the author for the Fearless Eating blog. Craig is a wealth of information about a wide range of nutritional topics, but today we want to focus on one of his favorites, bone broth. So if you followed for either of us for any amount of time, you know that we're both a big fan of broth as well, and we promote it highly. I met Craig virtually. I never met him in person. I actually heard about Craig when I went to Nutritional Therapy Association back in 2011 up in the Connecticut area, and he's from Boston, right, Craig?
I'm from Long Island, but
Long Island, but you live in
Massachusetts now.
Massachusetts. Ha! Yeah. Sorry about that. So Craig was like this guy. I kept hearing his name. Everybody's Craig Fear, because everybody up there seemed to know you, you know. And so I'm like, who's this Craig Fear guy everybody's talking about? And, so it turns out Craig's a really great practitioner. He's been helping a lot of people. And today we're going to talk about his passion about bone broth and what he's doing with that as well. So welcome, Craig. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about you and your practice and kind of how you got started, and then let's talk about bone broth and why you're so passionate about bone broth.
Okay. Yeah, I graduated from the Nutritional Therapy Association practice back in 2008. I was part of the first graduating class, and just kind of built my practice little by little. The first graduating class was in New York, and then I moved to Massachusetts to kind of make a fresh start. And it's kind of slow going to start, but I kind of just kept at it and getting more clients and having more success with folks. And I guess my name kind of started spreading around a little bit, and so that's always a good thing. And then after, a few years, I got into the online world a bit, like everybody tends to do, and I started blogging, and I started my blog, Fearless Eating, which is fearlesseating.net, and didn't know what I was doing in the beginning, but just kept at it and started learning how to, how to blog and how to write, and then I got into writing ebooks, and so I have two now. And the last one I just came out with my new book on broths. And I just, when I work with folks privately, mostly I do help people with digestive health issues. And I'm always looking for ways to kind of just, condense information down and help people with, some of these traditional foods and help them just make it doable and kind of demystify the process. And so one of the topics that kept coming up in working with people was bone broth, and people always had a lot of questions about them. And as simple as it is to kind of simmer some bones in water, it's something that so many people, especially my generation anyway, Generation Xers, I guess, anyone kind of born in the 70s or after really didn't grow up making these things. And so I got so many questions from people of how do I make these things, where do I find the bones, how long do I simmer it, and kind of a sense of overwhelm, because as we know, bone broths are just so healing to our gut. And so that's how I kind of decided, what, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to do this online program which I've put together to just kind of condense it down and make it as simple as possible for people and kind of direct it towards people who are really new to it, just kind of starting out with it, and just kind of keep it as simple as possible to help people learn how to do it, because, I mean, it's really, really easy. It's really easy. So that's how I kind of got into this.
Awesome. Yeah, I find that in talking to a lot of people, the concept of making bone broth seems so overwhelming, and to me it's so simple. You just toss the bones in the pot and you put some water, and it is one of the areas that I see a lot of hang-ups. So yeah, I've looked through your course, and it's fantastic. And one question that, Lydia probably gets asked a lot, I bet all of us get asked, is why can't they just go to the store and buy the broth that you see there? I mean, you can buy organic, and you can even, I've started seeing bone broth, like actually labeled as bone broth on the carton, started to pop up at my health food store. So why would people not want to buy those, and why is that not as good as making your own at home?
Yeah, it's a very different product that you're getting in stores as opposed to doing it yourself. So for starters, I mean, if you were to go to the store, I mean, if you just, well, I'm sure a lot of people have, and they're very popular. If you look at the ingredient label, I mean, look what's in there. You're basically going to see a lot of flavorings. You're going to see things like, even in the organic ones, you're going to see things like organic chicken flavor, organic beef flavor. You're going to see things like natural flavors, which is not natural at all. It's really a chemical flavoring. You'll see yeast extract. That's a huge one, especially in the organic broths. And the reason they're putting those things in there is because if you do it in the real manner, in the traditional manner, the way our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers did it, which is a kind of a slow simmering, that slow simmering of the bones in water extracts the nutrients over time. And it has a lot of healing qualities to those broths. Well, if you're trying to make a business out of this, time is money, and these companies are not going to sit there and simmer these bones in water for, hours on end. And so they kind of do a kind of brief version of it. So they kind of take a watered-down broth, and then they add the flavorings to add the taste back in, because also when you kind of simmer these things for a long time and do it at home, again, the traditional way, they take on more flavor. So they add in these flavorings to kind of mimic the taste of a real broth. They don't simmer them for the length of time that's needed to simmer them to kind of get out the healing qualities to them. And so they're just not the same thing. They're not even close. And so you have these kind of the conventional ones are almost toxic. I mean, they're full of junk, full of MSG and even some GMO oils. But the organic ones, they're really not that much better, maybe not as poor quality ingredients, but not nearly the same thing as the traditional way to do it, which I explain and show people how to do in my book and in my course.
Awesome. Yeah, Lydia, do you have anything you want to talk about with there? I know, Craig, you've done some traveling around the world. I think that I've learned a little bit from you in our past discussions. So I definitely want to hear about that and kind of your experience with making bone broth the traditional way and how your travels influenced deciding to make the course and your practice and everything like that. But before I dominate the conversation, I want to make sure Lydia has time to pop in too.
Oh, I could talk about this topic all day long, of course. But, you guys have said a lot of the same things. One thing I think is so great about that you're doing this course and everything is it really is something that was passed on from generation to generation. I think we're going to kind of branch off into traditional broth in a bit. But, if you never saw it done before, you're like, what the heck is it? It's like a foreign concept. So it's great that, more people are learning to make it, because a lot of people get hung up literally and don't do it because they're clueless. So it's nice to be able to see it being made, or even, have someone show you if possible. So that's where I see the big hang up, is people just kind of confused by the whole process. But it really is quite easy, and it's cool that you're, working on teaching people in a variety of ways. So Yeah, let's talk about how to make bone broth the traditional way and also how you kind of learned that through your travels as well.
Sure, yeah, I kind of learned about it in kind of a roundabout kind of way. Before I even became a nutritional therapist, before I even got into kind of the real food, traditional food movement, I was done some traveling for a little bit, and I went over to Asia, and I traveled through Thailand for a little bit, and then on another trip I went through India and Burma a little bit, or Myanmar, and I just fell in love with the soups over there, especially in Thailand and Burma, that kind of Southeast Asian cuisine, and I just loved them. But it's funny, I wasn't really looking at it from a real food perspective. I didn't know why I loved them. I just loved them. And another thing I loved about being over there was just the markets in Asia they're just so visually stimulating in so many ways, and I would just go through these markets in a state of awe, and I didn't understand it back then until I looked back on it after I got my education through NTA and becoming a nutritional therapist. But I kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together when I looked back and said, oh, and I went through the markets, and there was just all this fresh food, but also broths are a big part of the street food and the street markets, and there's always like simmering pots of broth and different types of soups, and the kind of the animals they're freshly slaughtered, which can be a little shocking, to see, fresh, chicken parts and like whole chickens and, pig heads and pig hooves kind of being offered, but it's just part of their, it's what part of their day-to-day life is about. And they go to the markets and they get their food and they get different, for the bone broth, they get different animal parts to make in the bone broth, and that's all on display. It's so you see it all. And it wasn't so after when I came back from Asia and then learned about traditional food and like why bone broth should be made with real bones and real animal parts, that I looked back and realized like, oh, that's why everything was so phenomenally fresh and delicious. They were doing things in the traditional manner, using like real animal parts, real bones, simmering on them right there, and then kind of adding the flavorings. Everything was like freshly made, and it was just, I just could not. You just can't get that today, in America unless you're doing it yourself. I mean, these canned broths and these canned soups, they're just nothing compared to, when you do it fresh and you do it the right way. So that's how I got into it, and then I started recreating these soups when I came back from America, and I just had this affinity towards Asian flavored themed soups, and so I share a lot of those on my blog, and I have a whole chapter in my book for Asian noodle soups, which are just among my favorites. So there's a Thai coconut curry soup, and my absolute favorite soup is a mohinga, which is a traditional Burmese soup that's made with a fish broth and has all those beautiful quintessential Southeast Asian flavors like lime and, chilies and fish sauce and lemongrass. And, I just fell in love with them, and I make them all the time now myself, and I love sharing them with people.
You are making me so hungry right now.
Me too.
They're not hard. Once you make your broth, these things come together very quickly.
Yeah.
And they're really not fake at all.
So true. So, Craig, did you feel like, do you remember back then when you were having this experience, like, I know it sounds like it made you feel amazing just from your description, but did you notice that, like, a health connection? Did you notice it making you feel good or better or anything like that early on?
Yeah, actually, when I was traveling through Asia, those were years where I was having some digestive problems, which I had for a few years. And, anytime I had those broths, it made me it made my stomach feel so much better. Like I felt so nourished and balanced and well. But it wasn't until I came back from Asia and then kind of, did the program that we both did, and that I learned to kind of heal my gut in a more of a specific way. And so bone broths are certainly, not the only thing, but certainly a part of that, without a doubt.
I like to call bone broth like spackle for our gut.
Good, yeah.
I love that.
Uh-huh.
Well, let's talk a little bit about why bone broth is so nourishing to us. I mean, I know a lot of our listeners are going to know because they followed Lydia and I for a long time, but, you know, we're always getting new people that are coming to us for information, so they may not even really know much about bone broth and why it's healthy and why we should be consuming it.
Right.
Yeah, sure. There's really like two things in bone broth that are especially nourishing to our gut. So the first is the minerals from the bone. So obviously bones are mineral rich, and when we're simmering those bones in water for extended periods, those minerals are leaching out, and we're getting a nice kind of spectrum and complement of minerals. So it's not just, you know, calcium, but it's a lot of the macro minerals and micro minerals, which kind of work in balance with each other. So we get them in the broth in their kind of natural balance with each other. And of course, you know, these broths are just so easily digestible. There's not a lot of energy your body has to expend or digestive kind of work it has to do to kind of break it down or digest it and absorb it. It's very easy for our body to handle. So there's the minerals. And then the second thing is the collagen in a good bone broth. So collagen is basically all the connective tissues that, you know, like our joints and our cartilage and our skin is made up of collagen. It's actually the most abundant protein in our body. And so traditionally, cultures that made bone broth, and pretty much almost every culture made, you know, different types of bone broth, they wouldn't just include the bones, but they would include other parts of the animal, which were really rich in collagen. So, for example, in a chicken broth, it would be, you know, chicken backs or even chicken feet. For a beef broth, it'd be like the oxtail and, you know, different types of bones which are rich in collagen. And so when we simmer the collagen in water for long periods, along with the bone, that breaks down too. And that collagen is rich in amino acids, which are very healing to our gut, proline and glycine. And you can actually see evidence of this, evidence of the collagen in the bone broth when it cools. So when it cools to room temperature, it often, if you use enough collagen-rich parts and you do it the right way, it'll form gelatin. It'll gel, literally like Jell-O. You take it out of the fridge the next day and it'll look like Jell-O. Now, if you warm it up, it'll of course turn back to a liquid. But that gelatin is kind of the visual evidence that you've got a lot of collagen in your broth. So the collagen is broken down into gelatin, and that gelatin has some really anti-inflammatory healing properties to your gut as well.
Mm-hmm.
Did I describe that well? Was that a good explanation?
Yeah, that was great. I always like to ask people, does your broth jiggle when it wiggles?
Yeah.
I always love it whenever, I mean, some of my batches have better, they set up better than other batches. So anytime I have a really good batch, I like to do a little video of it and throw it on Instagram or something just to kind of show people.
I always tell people like they get all like hung up on like trying to do it the right way, and some people will come like, oh my God, my broth didn't gel. What did I do wrong? Mm-hmm. I want to get a gel in my broth. I'm like, don't worry about it. You know, it's perfect. It's usable. Don't ever throw away a broth that doesn't like gel. There's a lot of reasons it may or may not gel, and like even in my own life when I do it, like some batches are great, and some batches I'm like, wow, that did not gel as well as I thought. I don't know why, but don't throw it out. It's still great to use.
Sometimes I use wingtips, by the way, in addition, chicken wingtips or turkey wingtips or whatever.
Yeah, all that stuff.
So, you know, you could even do, like, I buy pastured wings from my farmer, and we just use the bones, and I cut the wingtips off before I bake them, you know, and throw all the bones, and it's a ton of wingtips. Yeah. And that's my favorite because that makes super dense, gelled awesomeness.
Yeah, of course. You know, I tell people save all the bones, save all like parts you're not going to consume, and just kind of keep it in the freezer bag. And when you're ready, you know, make your broth. So there's so many different ways you can make these broths.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You really can't mess it up.
You can't. I mean, you can't mess it up. I always tell if it doesn't come out like great. Well, the great thing about broths is that, we flavor them up after the fact. So you have your broth, and even some broths, like to me, beef broth never really taste that great when you're done with it. So that's where kind of making like things like soups come in, where you're going to add, obviously like salt and pepper, but in like Asia they add a lot of fish sauce and soy sauce and different type of pastes. Like you can add a miso, just like a teaspoon of miso to like a chicken broth or a beef broth, and you got like an instant delicious broth. Or there's tons of these things you can add to to flavor them up and make them absolutely delicious.
Yeah, from a culinary perspective, you'll find that all these top chefs are like, broth's like the key to good cooking, Yeah. So it's very versatile. But tell us more about, say, what if some people are like, I just don't really like soup all that much? Why should I make broth?
I bet you people, and I've come across lots of those people, I bet you those are like, again, people who've grown up eating canned soup, or these like boxed soups. Like, they're okay, but they're nothing like, they never knock your socks off. But if you really make soup from scratch, and I would challenge anyone to like make the recipes in my book, and you're going to love them. And one thing about soups is, you can make them really hearty and really filling. It doesn't have to be like I never make chicken soup anymore. I can't find it so boring. Like, okay, chicken broth and then some, carrots and onions and chicken meat. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But like, I want something a little bit more. I don't know. Like to me, I always I like to experiment. I like to do things a little bit more exotic. These Asian soups. You don't have to, but they don't have to be these kind of boring, kind of standard all soups we've grown up with. And you can really like put them, make them really filling. So like for example, just a simple thing you can do in the morning. I'll have, this time of the year especially now, I start doing a lot of broth for breakfast. But I make them substantial. I poach some eggs in there. I might throw in some cooked rice if I had it, just to give it a little bit of, boost to it. So, there's a million different things you can do to kind of make these phenomenally delicious.
I agree. If I eat soup, I make soup, 10 or 15 quarts at a time. I do a huge batch, and then I freeze it because I eat soup either for lunch or dinner almost every day, typically for lunch. But and I eat it for breakfast every now and then. Sometimes I'll just wake up and I'll be like, no, I want soup for breakfast. And and I put a ton of stuff. Like soups are just a great way to use up leftovers. Like if I've got random leftovers that we don't finish, I usually just toss them in the freezer and then I just dump them in the pot. And you can really make some hearty meals out of soup, and it's nourishing, and all those veggies are cooked down in it, so it's easier to digest. And I absolutely love soup. I encourage people to experiment with it. Yeah, because I meet some people too that they just don't want to eat soup. They don't like soup, and you're right. They probably have grown up on the canned stuff that just doesn't taste all that great. So.
Yeah, and Asia also changed my perspective on it. Again, I never really had soup much. Maybe we think of it like as an appetizer. You go out to eat, it's like an appetizer. It's not really like a meal you get in a restaurant. But when I was in Asia, they have them all meals of the day. They have them for breakfast. They have different types of them for lunch, for dinner, and they have so many different types of them. So that's where I started to see, you can really have these things any meal of the day, and they were really substantial. They didn't make me feel like I wanted or needed more. And then in my book, I do have a broth for breakfast section with 3 chapters on simple broth. One's broth and eggs, so different types of broth with poached eggs and different ways you can flavor it for a super simple 5-minute breakfast. And then I have savory oatmeal, which is actually broth and oatmeal, which I know sounds crazy, but is actually really good. And then I have congee, which is simple rice cooked in broth, which is really common in Asia. And I have a bunch of recipes for those too.
Nice. Yeah. That sounds so good. I'm still hungry.
And actually you're going to be sharing a recipe on my site in November for the congee as well. So so people can check that out and kind of get familiar with it. And I can't wait to make it. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always seeing your pictures, man, that you're posting of your soups, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to climb through the screen and join you. This looks so good. So colorful.
Yeah, I love them. And another thing about them is, like, why I make them so much is I just find them, like, practical. And, you know, everyone's looking for, like, ways to, you know, not spend all day in your kitchen. So if you make the broth up front and you make a large portion of it, then, you know, every week pretty much I make a large pot of soup, and I'll decide, like, what I want to make. And, you know, I have it all week. And I really don't get tired of it. I really, you know, I have it almost every day for maybe 6-7 days in a row. But it just makes things so much easier, you know, with like, you know, my everyday life, you know, and because once it's done, it's just like, well, I got to just warm it up. And it's, you know, it's like I come home, I'm tired at night, and soup's ready. You know, 5-minute warming up, and so it makes things a lot easier for people too.
Definitely.
I totally agree. Yeah, you can pack a lot of nutrition in one bowl of soup. So if you're looking, I think it's one of the best ways to get the biggest bang for your nutrition buck in a way. So.
Yep,
definitely.
So you have this course, How to Make Bone Broth 101, and this is your new baby here. So why don't you kind of tell people what that can do for them and what they can get out of that course and what's going on with that?
Yeah, it's How to Make Bone Broth 101, and basically I just it was funny how I came to it. I wrote my book, and then there was like this, you know, time delay between you send it off to the publisher and they, you know, before it's really ready. And I was walking the dog in the park one day, and I just had this idea. I'm like, you know, there's always going to be those people who, you know, they learn better through, you know, seeing things and reading things. And I know as much as I clearly explain it in the written word on my blog or my, you know, book, there's always those folks who are going to have like 10 million questions, you know. And I just thought, why, you know, this wouldn't be difficult to make a short, very short, simple video course for people who just want to like watch me show them how to do it. So I designed it specifically for people who are kind of new to this, new to making bone broths. And basically I have 5 videos for making different types of bone broths. And the 5 most basic broths probably most kind of people would make, and that's, of course, chicken, beef broth, a pork broth, fish broth, which is actually my favorite broth, and then a mixed broth where you can use you know, different types of you know, you can throw in some chicken, beef, and pork. And I just kind of run through like how I do it, how to do it, and kind of keep it really simple. And then I include some soup recipes as well. So once you have the broths, you can start using them. So it's a really simple kind of basic course.
Nice.
I love it. I have gone through the course, and I was just blown away with how much information you had in there because, I mean, you really kind of think, I mean, a lot of people think that bone broth is really simple, and it is, but you can do so much with it, and there's so many different types of broth you can make, and I can kind of consider myself a bone broth expert, and I was learning stuff from you that I had never even thought of or considered, so I highly recommend the course. It's fantastic. It's a great way for people that have lost that generational knowledge. The loss of generational knowledge is something that I really am passionate about because I see it just more and more and more that we have at least one, if not 2 or 3 generations of people who they just don't even know how to do the basics, and their health is suffering because of that. So anything we can do to provide them with easy tools and skills that they can implement without becoming overwhelmed. You don't have to be a master chef, but these are simple things that you can implement into your kitchen that will greatly improve your health. So
yeah, I mean, I don't approach it from a chef perspective at all. You know, I'm not a chef. I'm not a trained chef. I just approach it from like a person who, you know, the basics from just a person who wants to like make these things and, you know, not obsess over like with a chef, they really got it. you really got to get the, when you have people paying you, you got to you got to do it a certain way to really, and they have different techniques for getting clear broths and, different things they're doing. But I just keep it really basic and really simple for, you don't have to obsess over getting it exactly right. So I just really keep it to a basic kind of minimum. And I'll just say real quick, the reason my favorite broth is fish broth is that's actually the one broth where you really don't want to simmer it longer than an hour. It's actually just an hour simmer time, and that's why it's my favorite. And you can really still extract a lot of the nutrients out of it and get an incredible flavor from it. And that's something I actually only learned relatively recently. I used to simmer it a long time, like with the other broths, and it never was very good. And I realized and I learned that when you simmer fish broth too long, like those delicate polyunsaturated oils will kind of go rancid. doesn't give you very good tasting fish broth. So you actually want to do it for an hour. So you can actually make a fish broth very, very quickly.
Right. So what's your favorite fish to use? I mean, I know you give options, but what's your personal favorite?
I just go to the local fishmonger. I have a few places I go, and I just take what they got. So they're always going to have like different types of fish bones. It just depends on, and I'll just use what they got. And so it's often well, in my area we get there's a lot of cod, and so I'll use a lot of the fish bones from cod. But just use whatever they give you. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you do want kind of like the white fish. You don't want like the oily fish.
Right.
So that's kind of important. And another thing about like fish bones is that they're really cheap. I mean, you're not going to see them really on display. And you go to your fishmonger, and usually they just throw these fish bones out, because no one wants them.
Man.
So if you go and ask them, can you save me some bones? They'll be happy to give you some. And you can usually get a whole bag for just a few bucks.
Cool. Hey, can you speak to a little bit, this is a passion of mine, the whole mineral piece. So one of the reasons why you like fish broth is probably, and I'm guessing here, is that it's probably the most nutrient rich, right? And one of the reasons would be, in part, because you're using fish heads, and there's a lot of nutrition in there, in those babies, right? One of my favorite minerals you can get from fish is selenium.
Selenium and iodine are the two that you can get in fish, probably more so than the land animal bones. And yes, so it's great if you can to get the fish heads too. And they're going to be concentrated in those tissues in the fish head. And those are great in particular. They're great for thyroid health in particular. So if you're having some thyroid issues, a nice fish broth would make a great addition to your diet for sure.
Yeah, is anybody not having thyroid issues today?
I know, right? Please, I know. Seriously.
Yeah, so that's a incentive right there. Plus, it's a quicker broth to make. So.
Yeah. I find it to be the most. I find it to be one of the most flavorful broths. Like I never have to add much seasoning to it afterwards.
Mhm.
I find obviously you want to add like your other things that you add in broths are like the mirepoix, the fancy French term for like carrots, onions, and celery. So to me, that with fish bones is kind of, I don't know, it's magical. It just tastes so good. It's really delicate. It's really light. It's some of the chicken or beef broth, if you simmer it for an extended period, it can be a little heavy, a little greasy, not in a bad way, from that gelatin, but. And you'll get gelatin from fish broth too if you use the fish heads, but it tends to be a bit lighter. I find anyway.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Fish broth is one thing that I have not made. I think I've made almost all of the other ones, but I'm going to have to try. It's hard here to get any kind of good fish. I'm landlocked Colorado, so access to good quality fresh fish is harder, but there are some pretty good fish markets that do fly in fish every day, fresh fish, so I'm going to actually give them a call and see if I can track down some bones and some heads just to give it a try.
Yeah, it's great. It's my favorite. And I actually have a whole, what do I call it? I call it the Soups from the Sea chapter in my book, where I give people some about 10, 12 recipes that use fish broth. Chiapino, bouillabaisse, the chowder, a few Asian kind of themed things as well. So there's a lot you can do with it.
Man, hungry
again.
Yeah,
we're going to have to go eat lunch now.
Yeah, I'm looking at your Chiapino recipe, and I'm like, I think I'm going to make this weekend. Yep.
That's really simple. It's really simple.
Settled.
It's like tomato-based, a little wine, and you can use any seafood you want, whatever you just kind of, like some whitefish, you can throw in some different shellfish, some shrimp. I mean, it's kind of like up to you, whatever you want to use. So flavorful. I love it.
So psyched. Can't wait. So tell us really quick. I'm curious because I don't know the answer to this myself. Like if someone signs up for your course, they get to learn how to make all these different types. They get some recipes. Do you have any kind of additional support, or do they get to keep the, access for? I mean, what kind of goes on behind the scenes?
Once they sign up, it's permanent access, so that you'll get a login. You create a login, name and password, and then you go to the course anytime you want, and you can review the videos anytime you want. They're permanently up there. And then for those that want, I do have a Facebook group for the people who want to just kind of have a little community around it and ask questions and share their experience. So there's a way to kind of stay connected once you sign up for the course.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's very reasonably priced. It's like I want to really encourage people to sign up and make it. It would probably cost you less than if you went to the store and bought like organic, broth and made a soup on your own. So it's very, very affordable.
Oh, totally. It's super affordable. I was just really, really shocked with how much great information you had in there for such a low price for it when I went through the course. So Lydia and I will make sure we include everything in our blog post, and if you're listening to this on YouTube, it'll be down in the video description. So everything you need to get in touch with Craig and check out his course if you're interested in that. Do you have any takeaways for our listeners today when it comes to bone broth? Like what some of the most important things for them to think about and things that they could maybe implement right away?
If you're just starting, I mean, it doesn't get any easier than a chicken broth. I mean, you can get everything you need from a whole chicken. So I would just say start there. That's just the easiest way to get going. But you can't screw it up. I mean, you can, but it's really hard to screw up bone broth. Don't be afraid to just start. I mean, really, it's just simmering. It's just simmered in water for some time. And you go, it's so easy. So don't think like it's gonna the big learning curve to this. Just do it. Just get going. Just do it.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. Well, that's great. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up for today. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know. If the information that we spoke about today resonated with you, and others who could benefit from it, please share it. We would also love it if you could leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. We'll have the links down below where you can leave the reviews. And whenever you share our podcasts and our blog posts and you leave us reviews, that really helps us reach more people with our message of health and wellness. So Lydia and I really, really appreciate it. Don't forget to stop by and say hi to Craig. His site is fearlesseating.net. And we'll also have links down below, so if you don't have a pen to write that down or you can't get to it right now, just check out the blog post and we'll link you to everything that you can use to get in contact with him. And then if you're looking for even more information on natural living or real food recipes, both Lydia and I have a ton of soup and stew recipes that you could get started with as well if you needed some new inspiration. And you can find us on our site. My site is deliciousobsessions.com, and then you can find Lydia over at divinehealthfromtheinsideout.com. So that is it for today, all about bone broth, and we will be back again next week. Have a great day, everyone.